Mohammed, welcome to Let the Quran Speak, and congratulations on your new role as Executive Director of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mohammed, I want to talk to you about the sort of political rhetoric and the divisions that we see on social media. It seems like the two sides are so polarized, and there's no way of bridging the gap. What are your thoughts on how we can deal with this problem?
So first and foremost, I mean, social media is not designed to have free speech. Let's be honest here. When we talk about social media, we talk about algorithms. The news feeds that you receive are programmed to be able to feed you information that you want to hear. So no matter what they're doing right now, it's not working. Because, in a democracy, we have free speech is so important to democracy because we need to make sure that people hear a plurality of views. Mm-hmm. So even if you have, a crazy uncle or a neighbor who might have different opinions, free speech allows us to be able to hear them, contemplate what they're saying, think about it, and then come up with our own opinions. But in the social media environment, the way speech is policed on social media right now is done. It's not really policed. It's policed in a way where it's directed so that the content that you're receiving is content that that's going to keep you on there longer. Mm-hmm. It's not content that's a diverse opinion. So when social media platforms talk about they don't want to restrict free speech, what they're really talking about is that they actually don't want to change the algorithms that are driven so that you stay on the platform longer, so that they make more profit. And the reality is that that is the root cause of where I think, at least, where the polarism is coming from. Because when you and I, we might have different opinions, and I might not like your opinion, but if I hear your opinion, and I have to hear your opinion because there's a diversity of views, then I have to think about it. And even if I don't like you, or I don't agree with you, at least I have to hear you out. And that's fundamental to our democracy. And that's what I see eroding right now, where polarization is just making us so siloed. Our visions are becoming more acute. The breadth of information that we're receiving is so much more limited. And until governments step in, to be honest, because I actually don't believe these for-profit corporations are going to do anything.
So what do you think governments can do?
The governments need to figure out how to enforce a sense of standards. Like, for example, if there's a movie, would you take your kid to an R-rated movie?
Definitely not.
No, because an R-rated movie is designated R because of the content that exists. Right? Similarly, it's not impossible to do that on social media as well. We need to be able to figure out how to do that. There's lots of solutions that different governments are looking at, but that needs to happen. And until that happens, I don't have faith in social media companies to do it on their own benevolence. I think governments need to step in and start creating standards for them to be able to adhere to.
I hear what you're saying about algorithms, but I also hear this argument from far right extremists who are saying, look, we're putting our ideas out there. I'm typing a post. I don't want it to get deleted or reported because that's violating my freedom of speech. Yeah,
well, we have hate speech laws here too. We don't have absolute free speech here in Canada. And to be frank, I don't buy that. Because if people are going to say something that is going to be very harmful, that legally we could prosecute, then that should be prosecutable. Right? They can say it, but then they need to be able to pay the penance for it as well. And I think that, before in traditional media, there were standards of what you can say, what you can't say. And I think with social media, those things are all gone.
But political discourse sort of feeds into that, right? There are so many things that have been normalized. For example, the way we talk about immigrants or refugees, the way we talk about, other races or groups. And so some of the far-right activists are using those arguments, are using those very arguments. They're not advocating violence necessarily, but they're using those arguments in their, let's say, Facebook posts or on Instagram or 4chan or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that there's lots of lawsuits around those too, right? People are starting to get charged. So governments need to educate their police forces on how to charge on hate speech far better than they're doing right now. And I think that the more they are able to charge people, we get convictions, the more we better understand what are the limitations of these conversations. Because the standards, you're right, they're gone. When people talk, the most horrible stuff online and get away with it, those create precedents. So it allows other people to go further.
And you know, people hear it from political leaders as well. So that feeds into what becomes normal and accepted within society.
Totally. I mean, I remember distinctly in 2017, I think we were working on the Peel School Board because there was a bunch of Islamophobia there. And there was, you know, all these far-right voices that were coming. And one would say something one day and get, you know, 100,000 views on whatever they're saying. The next day, somebody, like the next person would come by and say something even worse. Because, and then they're like, and then they're escalating it, and then they're escalating it. And it just got perpetually worse and worse and worse because there was just no limitations to those things. And, you know, I don't know, honestly, the correct answer of how exactly we need to monitor and create standardizations for social media. But there's a lot of people that are thinking about it right now, and governments need to be able to work with them to make that happen.
I find that, you know, there isn't much engagement within people who are anti-racist and far-right activists. How do you suggest that they bridge that divide? I mean, what sort of conversations have to happen?
You know, I mean, currently that conversation is happening with police lines in the middle at protests.
So maybe there is engagement, but not the right kind of engagement.
But that's not a conversation. You know, honestly, like the reality is, and just to pivot
Do you think
bit,
anti-racists need to reach out?
I don't know if anti-racists need to reach out or far-right people need to reach out. What I think is that people need to have more civility in their conversations. Like like there's been people who have attacked me online who come from the right. I want to know. I would, you know, maybe sometimes I would think that some of what they're saying is far-right, but. You know, just for an example, like there was an article written about me that I found to be really Islamophobic and problematic, and the author of which I ran into at a conservative conference. And I went up to him and I said, you know, what you wrote about me actually hurt me. You know, my office had to change our security protocols. We had to think about that because I was getting hate mail at work. You know, I had to distance my family from my social media presence because, you know, and it's painful to take down pictures of my wife and kids because, you know, that's my family. But also, you know, I got threats in my emails. I got threats like in different places. And that was because of you. And the reporter, you know, first he was just like, well, that's not my fault. Just, you know, if, you know, far-right people take what I did and just, you know, go further on it, then that's their fault. But I was like, look, you know, whatever you might think is yours, but there are real life implications. And maybe we got to sit down and talk this through a little bit. So then we came, like, a couple of weeks later, we were back in Toronto, and I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, so when are we getting back to, when are we getting together? So we got together for lunch, and we spoke for about 2.5 hours. And I explained to him, you know, he had 1,000 questions around the Muslim community. I just don't think that he had an accurate understanding of where we were at. And all these negative perceptions around, you know, the worst of what we could look like were what he thought we all were, because he kind of bulked us all into this one idea that he had in his head. And I just said, look, there's this and that and this and that and this and that. You know, all of us are different. There's Black Muslims who I have no idea how their experiences are at. There's brown Muslims, there's Indonesians, there's people from all over the place. This is a plural society, a plural community. And I think he got it. Because, you know, every time afterwards where, you know, people that were connected to him would, you know, attack me online, he would actually go back to them and say, hey, I know the guy, please take down this nonsense. And he's actually been a bit of a shield and my protection. So, I mean, to be honest, I think the conversation needs to begin with a little bit of empathy to be able to understand your experiences. But that's for the anti-racism as a whole. Right, you know, I don't know the experiences of Indigenous people. They are our First Nations of this country, and I can't say this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. Because I haven't lived their lives, right? No one can tell me how I should be living my life. So why should I have the right to tell them their life? But I think...
So, people have studied far-right groups and the individuals within them.
Yeah.
And they found that, you really need to, what they really want is to be understood and to be heard. And that a little bit of kindness actually makes a huge difference in the way they perceive you. Do you think this is the step that anti-racists need to take?
I mean, honestly, I think the prophetic example is probably the best one where, when somebody is doing horrible to you, you do good to them. Because your duty is to do good. So no matter, I think anti-racists should take that approach. I think Muslims should take that approach. I think anybody else who wants to have a kinder outlook in this world should take that approach. That's the approach that I take. I don't like calling out people publicly. I would rather call them on the phone and say, hey, because I think, but there's a difference. And because there's some people, to be honest, are not willing to have that conversation. And they're looking for a fight. And I've been in those situations too, where you have extremists that are saying, yeah, let's sit down and talk. But the point of it for them is not to sit down and talk. It's for them to make a video where they're just yelling and screaming at you, and you're trying to have a conversation with them. And that's not fair either. I think there needs to be a sense of expectation of civility from both sides before conversations can happen. And if people can adhere to that at least, then I think dialogue is the best way to go.
Mohammed, are you optimistic that we will reach a point where there will be greater civility in political discourse?
Of course,
public discourse and conversations?
Of course, it has to go that way, because if it just
it looks pretty bad right now.
Yeah, I actually believe in the goodness of people's human nature.
Okay.
We will have ups and downs in terms of where society is at. But if we can't figure it out, then what hope is there really, right? Are we just going to lock ourselves in our houses and that's it? And I think the contributing factors around social media and just like the general rise of extremism and political rhetoric that feeds that extremism, these things will come in waves. Right now, honestly, we're in a very dangerous moment. I feel very unease right now because, there's the American election that's just happened, and you've seen even here in Canada, where there was a change of government the last time around, there was a increase of violence that followed the election towards Canadian Muslims, and I actually anticipate, I hope it doesn't happen, but the way the trend lines are going in the U.S., it seems like there's going to be a lot more violence there too.
Mohammed, what's your advice for individuals who are racialized and feeling a little bit worried and anxious that they could be harmed?
I think you just got to have hope, and don't lose hope. That's the most important part of it all, because if you lose hope, all you want to do is constrict yourself. And the way this conversation needs to expand is to open yourself. And if we're going to get it to a better society, it's not going to be because we've put ourselves in our homes and locked ourselves in. It's because we've engaged with people and we've built a better consensus around things. And the social norms around these things need to change. If we are currently comfortable with allowing such hate speech to just go unfettered, these things will not change. And I think that in order for that to happen, people need to be more open to having harder conversations on both sides.
Mohammed, thank you for sharing your important insights with us, and I can see that you're very well suited for this role, and I wish you the very best as Executive Director of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe, and please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.